Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Taryn Winter Brill. We're here with Talbot A. Stark. He's the author of Elite Performance for Managers, The Essential Steps for Transforming Your Career. Talbot, it's great to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
Congratulations on your first book.
Thanks. It's been, like they say, it takes a village to raise someone. I think it takes a global village to bring a book to market. So it's been quite a journey.
Well, tell us a little bit about the journey. And I'm always curious to talk to first-time authors. Why this topic? Why so passionate about helping people to success, revolutionize their career path?
Sure. For me, it's been 40 years of life experience from my time as a combat U.S. Army helicopter pilot through Silicon Valley and 25 years in international finance.
Wow.
And along the way, don't wow yet, because along the way, I didn't have a perfect career, but that's really been the passion as far as all the things I wish someone would have told me along the way, to try to distill those into one book, to really have the best career guide I never had. So that's kind of my passion, try to pass on the lessons I learned over my 40 years of life experience.
What do you think the biggest mistake is people are making on their road to success?
I'd rephrase it in that the awareness is what I think, trying to empower people. Mm-hmm. And what I saw often is that people are very earnest and dutiful, working hard.
Sure.
But the issue is, first thing is they're working 100% in tactical execution mode. All the right things, but the only way you're going to advance in your career and also give the best that you have to whatever organization you're a member of is to at least take 5 to 10% of your time to be strategic. To stop back, walk back, get perspective, increase my awareness. Because if you're only nose to the grindstone in tactical execution, that's where you can really hamper your own career or create self-sabotage.
Sure. It's like you're so in the weeds, right? You have to step back and kind of look at the big picture, so to speak. So Talbot, when you look back at your journey, at any point, did you have a roadmap that you just weren't executing, or was there no roadmap at all? Were you just kind of in the weeds, like you said, just concentrated, nose to the ground?
That's an excellent question, because before I wrote my book, that was the first litmus test for myself. Was there a plan? Could I codify this, or was it a random walk?
Right.
And I think as the first awareness is that I had to be strategic. I had to take time out from just being in execution mode to taking this 5 to 10% of it to be strategic in my planning. I think that was the first part. And then empowering yourself. And then one thing I do, and that I did at one point in my career, is asking myself, what perceptions do I think people have of me, being it the managers above me?
Sure.
You and I as peers and my direct reports.
Right.
What do I think that is? And sometimes you don't always have the ability for people to tell you directly, but just the idea of being aware of that. And then most importantly, what ideally would I like those perceptions to be? And then here's the hook. What are the deliberate actions that I'm going to take to try to influence those perceptions? So I think all of that, what I'm saying, that doesn't happen by fate. You have to really be planning, calculating, committing, and taking ownership. But I think for my readers, and as I experience myself, it can be very empowering.
Yeah, but I think also as someone who's new to the workplace, like you said, you're really just focused on the work, doing a good job, right? As opposed to advancing. So do you think that a lot of people just are hoping the company will promote them when it's time, and if I do good work, I'm going to prove myself, and it'll all fall into place and go naturally, right? I mean, that's what you're saying you have to combat, because it's not going to go that way.
No, that's I think a fair assumption. That was definitely the assumption I had in my first few years of my career. Let my results speak for themselves.
Right. Let the work speak for itself, right?
Sounds laudable. I'm not political, which is the pushback people get. But I think here again, it's really do I really understand, taking time, what are my boss's needs? Yeah. And more importantly, if I'm playing the game of chess effectively, what are my boss's desires?
Right.
And then it's reflection of where, if I'm honest, I call it the right angle rule in the book, meaning the horizontal leg is that person you see in the mirror every day.
Yeah.
And the person above. That intersection's the true you. So putting it together, it's how can I be honest with myself? Understand what my manager's goals are, and ideally my manager's goals.
Right.
And then where can I lean in? What plays to my strengths? But if I'm so consumed doing right things for the firm, on my day-to-day, just keeping busy, that's not good enough.
Yeah, it's just that hamster wheel of in the weeds. So I want to get into, you made a reference to these elite performance pillars, which we'll get into in a moment, which the book delves into. But if we can step back for a second, the title, Elite Performance for Managers, who is this book for? Is this only for the managerial subset, or is this for anyone even starting their career?
Sure. I think it's definitely targeted, in feedback now, the book's been out a couple months, it's targeted for managers all the way up to C-suite level people, but I think if you're just starting your career, it's going to provide an excellent perspective if that's your ambition, because the fundamental part is being a better you. That applies to the CEO of companies I work with, to people midway through their career, or just starting their career.
Right, okay. So it's about, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but is it about being political and networking a bit more to keep that trajectory going, as opposed to just doing the job and it'll speak for itself?
Yeah, I think I refrain from being political.
Yes, I thought you were going to say that, yeah.
But I think it's more, the first part is two ways. One, aware of the perceptions people have of me.
Yeah.
And the first thing is, that's someone's truth.
Yeah.
We're just meeting each other. We both are forming perceptions.
What's your perception? I'll share mine if you share yours.
We're
I'm
on
kidding.
film.
I'm kidding.
Now, I think the science behind that is, in the first 30 seconds, you're making an impression.
Right.
That's just life.
Yeah.
So in the workplace, it's, if I spent a good 23 years of a latter part of my career at a French bank. Mm-hmm. I don't speak French, it's a European bank. So I had to think about, what are my innate skills? What are some of my weaknesses? What is the firm trying to accomplish? And how can I be most productive utilizing who I am and what the firm needs? And so for me, it was a little bit of that forethought of like, okay, I can be an effective conduit to help the bank grow with American clients. That suited me well. So it's about not really being political, but understanding yourself, and then understanding how can I best fit in to what the organization's trying to achieve.
So let's get into some of these pillars. You mentioned being a better you, being a better manager, managing your manager. So just give us a few nuggets.
Sure.
Being a better you. What's your best recommendation?
So being a better you, I think time is the most valuable asset we have. So everyone I work with, the first thing I ask them to do, with respect to all the lawyers listening here, is to be a lawyer and document how you spend your day in 30-minute segments. If you want to be elite, do it from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
Interesting.
That awareness, without fail, I don't care at what level, that you'll draw some conclusions. And I try to have people not anticipate and consciously change their schedule. Just go through your normal work routine. First goal is back to creating the 5 to 10% of time to being strategic. For me, that meant I carved out 2 half-hour, no interruption sessions during the work week.
Terrific.
And usually spent about 2 hours, which worked for me, Sunday after family time before dinner, where I really was unplugged and held myself accountable.
Love that.
Now, I'll be honest also, the first time I sat in my office, we had glass offices, told my assistant, I don't want to have any calls unless it's a few people. Then I said, I'm not really a navel-gazing type of person, so what am I doing here?
Right.
But after that initial maybe anxiousness, I realized that part of it was a defense feature for me, meaning the human psychology is that why people get stuck in this nose to the grindstone phenomena is the brain likes having an objective. It accomplishes the objective, feeds it with endorphins, and let's repeat because that feels good because I'm getting things done.
Yep.
And that's that's the trap you need to avoid. So taking that time out, back to organizing your life and being a better you. One thing I'm passionate about, and I model a lot of elite athletes and successful people, to establish a morning routine. I've done pretty much the same things, same 6 things every morning of my life since I've been 17.
Wow.
Wow, in that some of it, hydrating in the morning, I think spiritually getting connected, doing some physical exercise, giving thanks to people are things that are important to me. I don't know what those things are going to be important to you, Taryn, or others, but I know one thing, that the morning you can control.
Yeah.
If we have children, we can have elderly parents, different things can happen, but that's just the amount of discipline. But what it gave me is it was almost my crutch going into the workplace. I knew starting every day I was 6 and 0. These are 6 things I do.
Okay.
I think if you look, 6-ish. MIT advocates 3 to 5 is kind of the most things someone can remember pertinent to a specific subject. So somewhere in there, 6 is for me, but it gave me a psychological edge coming in the day, knowing, okay, I don't know what life's going to bring at me today.
Right.
Some days it ended up 6 to 36 because the only wins I had were in my morning.
Right.
But I felt good knowing whatever happened on that day, the next day I wake up, I'm going to do the same 6 things. It's kind of own your morning, own your day, own your life. That's kind of the mantra.
Yeah. And before we get into being a better manager, I wanted to touch upon what you mentioned before about perceptions. Because I'm curious with the world we live in with social media now. People have perceptions of you before you walk in the door. So you mentioned going to work and what are the immediate perceptions I'm giving off, people are taking away from me. How do you combat perceptions even before you start the job?
Sure. Well, I think you brought out a good point, right? Social media today, it's pretty standard. People are going to check you out in LinkedIn or Google search you or whatever.
Absolutely, yep.
So to the extent you can control what's out there in the digital world, that again takes a bit of strategy because those things are permanent.
Yeah.
So think about that.
Yeah.
But then, people are going to form perceptions. Some people, when I work with people, it's like, oh, they aren't fair. I'm like, that may be, but again, that's the perception someone has. So the empowering thing is, what would I like those perceptions to be? And then what I like to do with clients is that, okay, I'm going to be your lawyer. Let's agree on the deliberate actions that you're going to take to try to change the perceptions that you think exist to the ones you'd like those to be. And then it's holding yourself accountable.
Right.
So an example for me, at one point in my career, and unfortunately I realized, and I talk about this in my book, oftentimes people don't give you a nice written out, here's the perceptions we have of you, okay?
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice. And we can't read minds yet either. But I think the effort of being aware of those things. And then for me, I'm like, okay, at one point in my career, I think the perceptions of myself were he's a good sales manager, he's a good client person, but I also realized there was a bit of connotation with that. That was my job. But I'm like, okay, I need to specifically in the meetings I participate in, not just say last month was 110% year on year, all things that would be fine, and change that such that I was meeting with a client, they're using generative AI to look at their execution processes. I think this is going to be transformational for the business that we're in and will ultimately impact sales and our interaction with our clients.
Right.
That meaning my choice of how I'm going to participate in the meeting and what I'm going to say will affect perceptions. So it's a little bit of being deliberate in recognizing the perceptions that someone may have of you and what would you like those to be.
Do you think the younger generation, I know you mentioned the book is more for the managerial subset, but do you think the younger generation is just unaware of perceptions when it comes to social media, some of the blunders they make? And I feel like it's become kind of the majority it's embraced. Yeah. There's kind of no net. And if you are someone who isn't out there kind of maybe doing extreme things, you're an anomaly.
No, I have 2 sons in the social media world, right? So I think each generation grows up in a different context.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
So the social pressures, expectations, I don't know exactly what they are. The only thing is, like we were saying before, I get it. I guess the trend, I'm not quite sure, is to always be out there and doing these things. I think the only thing I'd advise is just be careful because a lot of firms today will do background screens and so on. So I don't think you want to live your life in paranoia, but also be conscious that the digital world, that digital footprint will stay with you.
Yeah, I think someone once said if it's not kosher to be on the front of the New York Times, then don't post it, right? And anything you wouldn't want to be at front page news, don't, which I think is a good motto to live by in many capacities. we're just scratching the surface here. We talked about being a better you, being a better manager is in the book, but managing your manager I thought was interesting. Tell us a little bit about that. Don't want to give too much away, but I thought that was very unique.
No, I think the words are intentional, and I think people underestimate how much you can directly influence that relationship.
Is that so?
And first and foremost, we'll stay with the digital theme right now. I think many people would say that the uncertainty in the world has never been as high. So what applies to you and I, guess what, applies to our managers. Yeah. So the first thing in life, if the uncertainty for your manager is high, one key thing for success is be amazingly predictable. And that is one of the biggest things that people, you own that and can determine a lot of that outcome.
Yeah.
So in your manager's life where there's many things that aren't certain, just be that person who's always on time.
I like that.
Be that person who always deliver. More importantly, be that person, if we're in the second quarter now and there was a big anticipation of some deal that was going to happen and you sense it's not going the way you think, don't wait till the end of the quarter and say, yeah, I missed it. It's, I need some help. Boss, so it's doing everything you can. If your mindset, the visual for me is doing everything you can to help your team or your manager succeed, such that your manager, him or her, is in a wood cart and you're pushing them up the hill, not in a self-boasting way, but in an altruistic way.
Right.
If that's your mindset, if you're integral to your manager's success, I'll guarantee you one thing.
Yeah.
There's a strong likelihood that they're going to pull you because you're helping me in my career. We complement each other.
Yeah.
You may not get at the next town hall your name shouted out by your manager for everyone to hear, but if you want to progress in your career, be amazingly predictable.
Right. Because predictability lends itself to stability, right? In this world of uncertainty. So that makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of like a light bulb. I don't think a lot of people are thinking of that in terms of that equation. It's more like today is very extreme and uncertainty and shock value. But going back to the basics, stability, predictability, they go a long way. Why do you think so few people are actually managing their career? I'm saying even at the managerial level. Sure. We talked a little bit about starting off, but at that high level, where is the gap?
Yeah, I think really it happens because there's a difference between knowing and doing.
Sure.
You and I and our audience can say, well, that's pretty obvious, Talbot, right? However, many people, very successful people, when we have this conversation or they see this or see my book and want to engage with me, usually the first thing I'll ask them is, how much time do you spend unplugged really managing your career? And it's like, I know I should, but I'm too busy.
Yeah.
So right there, well, if you're not managing it, who is?
Yeah.
And so I think even at the most senior level, where one thing categorically, if you're going to rise up in an organization or take on more responsibility, you have to create bandwidth. Because this hits people like a punch in the face, and that they're distraught because they're not moving up as fast as they would like, and they tell me that they're exhausted, working harder than anyone. Their day ends at 6, and then there's an hour or two of other admin tasks and so on.
And they can't figure out why, right?
And these are hardworking, smart people.
Yeah.
But that first thing is that you need to create bandwidth, because logical people aren't going to give more responsibilities to someone who looks or is perceived to be struggling with what their job entails today.
Sure.
So I think the main thing is back to what I was saying before. It feels good to be busy, but that's the trap.
Right.
So it's like you have to be disciplined.
There's got to be a balance.
To pull back and say, okay, where do I spend my time? Is that correlated with intent to what's most important?
Yeah.
Or am I I got a meeting, I have this, and I'm just kind of reactive, or am I proactive?
Yeah.
This makes sense.
And I think a lot of the book deals with that balance instead of being in these silos like a lot of us are. A lot to get to, we're out of time, but in the book you talk about deleting delegation, replacing it with partnering. Really interesting, very important. I wanted to highlight that. The pillars speak for themselves. I just wanted to take a couple seconds. What's the advice you would give to someone starting in their career versus mid-career versus later in their career?
Sure.
How that varies?
Good question. So I think what I've seen, it's a big transition from academia, highly successful, smart young professionals coming into the workplace. And there's training, but a lot about what my book's about is training that isn't always given by any company. So I think the first thing for younger professionals, there isn't a syllabus. There may be an assignment, but find the tactful way to make sure you understand, because it's an intimidating situation. So usually what happens is you're giving me instructions, and I'm like, okay,
Right, yeah.
okay. I walk away, I maybe understand 30% of what you told me. So here's 2 ways to correct for that. 1, find out the cadence or preferred communication style to say, thanks, it was a really good meeting. I'm just starting the scope of the project we discussed. Here are my kind of, make it a effective way to come back and saying, this is my understanding.
Yeah.
Figure out what the right cadence is.
Communicate.
But what happens with younger folks is they think they understand, they don't communicate. A few days before the deadline, they bring something that's very far off the mark. So
Yeah.
it just make sure you really understand, and then along the way check in, because things
Yeah.
change.
Confirm that your understanding is aligned, right?
In whatever industry you're entering, there's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of new things.
Yeah.
You're meeting the manager for the first time, you don't know how they operate.
Sure.
So find the right time to ask those questions, but make sure to check in.
Okay, invaluable advice. All right, now mid-career.
Mid-career, I think here's the heightened perceptions as far as 2 ways. 1, I talk about, with my military background, about commander's intent. In the military, that means what's the desired end state as a manager, as the commander, down to the lowest echelon of your unit. As a manager, here's a quick litmus test if you're brave enough, where somewhere through the second quarter as we film, ask your direct reports to put down what they think the 3 most important things are for your group or team in 2024. If you do a histogram or just see what's the correlation, how diluted is your message? Does everyone understand? Does everyone come back with the same 3 things?
Great barometer.
or is it very diffused?
Yeah.
So simply there, and this is the part back to the person in the mirror, that you're accountable for making sure the people on your team understand your message. So I
Yeah.
think mid-career, understand back to communication. Juniors communicate into managers, and managers communicate back down.
Yes, right. It's cyclical, right.
Understanding, and then I think in the latter point of your career, and you could argue all these things are relevant throughout, but I think trust. Really, at this point,
Trust on whose part?
bilateral
Okay.
trust. Are we real partners? We've been working together for 15 to 20 years, or we're the key stakeholders. We're on the executive committee. At that point, you really need to be seen such that the things I'm putting forward are for the good and welfare. It's really understanding. If I want to get your insights into this, is there an ulterior motive, or am I really always trying to put the best foot forward?
Sure.
I think at that level, I need to trust your opinion. What do you think? Are we going about this the right way?
Absolutely.
It's back to partnering. That at a senior level, I think you really kind of, you're at some tipping point of your career. You can still be ambitious, but I think then it's guard down.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? I need to make some changes. So I think that honesty, kind of unguarded honesty at the senior level is paramount.
That's powerful. Is there an encore? Will there be another book to come, or?
I don't know. I'm so passionate, and it's been amazing getting feedback from F-16 pilots in Italy.
Sure, that works.
Yeah. Helping folks with a different perspective.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying helping people share what I've learned.
So nice.
I don't have all the answers, but I hopefully can give people some pointers along the way. So that's the focus right now.
Well, it's terrific, Talbot, and it's such a great roadmap, and your perspective is so unique just because, international corporate finance, U.S. Army, Silicon Valley, you put it all together, and this is the byproduct. So a really easy read and some really unique ideas that I think everybody can relate to, no matter what stage of your career you're in. So continued success, and I hope there will be an encore, and thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
And if you'd like more information on the book, just check out our website. It's c-suitebookclub.com. That's c-suitebookclub.com. I'm Taryn Winter Brill. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Bestseller TV.
Success transcends cities. As one of the world's most respected business leaders, I know what it takes. Join me now as I sit down with fellow leaders and we share our insights into how you can be successful. My name is Jeffrey Hazlett, and this is All Business.
Now, everyone knows that making money is the goal for all business, but today's guest goes beyond the usual rules of capitalism for good, and we love that. Eva Yazari is the CEO and founder of Beyond Capital Fund, a fund dedicated to raise up those at the bottom of the economic pyramid in places like India and Africa. Now, Eva recently released her first book. Awesome. I just think that's great. I've got 4, Eva, so catch up. Come on, let's make it happen. The book is called The Good Your Money Can Do, and I love that title, love the book. It's currently #1 new release on Amazon Futures trading list. Eva, welcome to All Business with Jeffrey Hazlett.
Jeffrey, it is so great to have you. You have incredible energy, and you just make me want to go out there and write 3 more.
Good. Let's do that, because we're all, that's what we're all supposed to be doing. If we're not here doing good, what's the purpose? I really think that's important. Now, as I looked at your background, you have a Wall Street background. All right. So what got you interested in what you call in the book impact investing?
So it's a great question. I do have a traditional finance background. I worked in the hedge fund investing world. I was very lucky to focus on the activist hedge fund managers, Bill Ackman, Carl Icahn, Nelson Peltz, those that rattle for change. And I was really inspired by their model to think about what more money could do, because really impact investing is just a reframing of how our money can be utilized to express our desires and intentions for a better society. And so I took that model and I kind of tweaked it a little bit and decided to focus on investing in purpose-driven leaders who are thinking about all stakeholders and therefore could have social and environmental returns baked into their business models.
In one of our groups, it's called the Hero Club, which is after one of my books, The Hero Factor. And we're big on values. We always try to put people first, above profits. Profits are important without question. What values do you look for when you invest?
Well, when I invest, I first, take a step back and think about what my values are. And I'm very focused on gender and racial equity at the moment. It's been a focus of mine for over a decade, but particularly with what we've seen in 2020, 900,000 women dropping out of the workforce in September 2020, all of the numbers are really pointing to the need to have a more inclusive society and inclusive markets. And the fact that there's a massive market opportunity when you open up businesses that are catering to female consumers or run by women, and you're opening up the pool of ideas. But those are really the 2 areas that I'm focused on personally in my portfolio. But the great thing about impact investing is that it is for everyone. It is for anybody that cares about homelessness or poverty or climate action, or is thinking about, how to bring more local food supply to their neighborhoods. And it opens up a large discussion about what more our money can really do.
When COVID hit, we saw a lot of women leave the workplace. What was your first thought when you started to hear about that?
I was deeply sad. I luckily did not have to deal with some of the challenges that many women did. I ended up having support for my children. Living in Texas, the schools were open. I got a lot of the silver linings of COVID, of also being able to not travel as a working woman and focus on my family. But I know the challenges that many other women face. And I have to say, I was sad and I was also angry that we haven't built a world where women can truly thrive. And as the mother of a daughter, I have really been tenacious in how I now think about where I invest. And I know that 77% of my current investment portfolio is managed by men. And I would like to make it more equal, because I think that women can also bring great ideas to the table.
Basing your investments on ESGs, or what is known as environmental, social, corporate governance practices, is a really big trend right now. In your mind, Eva, is that enough?
It is not enough. While I think it's an excellent toe dip for investors, it's an easy way in. Almost every advisor or 401k will have an ESG fund or sustainable fund. It's not enough because it is a passive strategy, which means that it is only screening out for
Let's
specific
check in the
types of
box.
companies.
It's for a
And
lot of
exactly.
check in the box. That's what they're doing. They're doing it for a PR reason or associate, and not so much. It's to keep people off their ass or their back, and so
Yeah.
they're checking a box. What more should they be doing?
Well, they should be thinking about how they are acting holistically. So I use an example of a very large company that sells sneakers that we all know in my book. And while they've done an excellent job of with aligning with specific initiatives, particularly Black Lives Matter in their marketing, there really isn't much going on when you think about the environmental impact of the millions of shoes that they create and sell, likely on a quarterly basis, and how that will end up, those shoes will end up after many uses in landfills. Furthermore, that company also came into light a couple weeks ago in the news for working with forced labor groups in China. And so I think the key is really to just for companies to truly and fully walk the talk, to think about all stakeholders, to take the extra time and energy. It is not something that they will need to, like change their business model around. It's just something where they need to dedicate and be intentional. And once they do that, it just will fall in line with the fact that what you're saying, balanced capitalism. Impact investing is not about tearing down or replacing the current financial system. It's just about engaging that system to do more. And that's what companies need to do.
I heard recently it shouldn't just be about generosity. It should be about solving injustice. And that's a big theme for you. It really, truly is, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I make the argument that we have a moral imperative to do good. And there are a couple reasons for that. It's not just charity. It's not just doing unto others. It's not just about, thinking about your neighbors. There is even a component of enlightened self-interest, which I talk about in my book, where when we do good for others, our lives are also improved. And part of the power of impact investing and using your money as a force for good and business as a force for good is really feeling good and feeling aligned as human beings. And so the concept of the moral imperative that we have extends beyond just thinking about the problems, and it's really thinking about the solutions and how many solutions where there are no trade-offs. I think when people think about impact investing, they think that you have to have concessionary returns or not make the same amount of money. We're not living in that world anymore. We're actually living in the perfect time where we have tremendous opportunity to make money and do good in almost every single asset class. Public equities, public debt, private markets. I'm a venture capital investor, and to be honest, I'd rather be investing in the emerging markets that I focus on than some of the deals done here in the U.S. because I see tremendous opportunity. So really, what it comes down to is knowing that it is important, but also focusing on the incredible solutions rather than the problem.
Let's talk about the book, okay? Because I always like to make sure we have great authors talk about their book. Why did you feel you needed to write The Good Your Money Can Do?
Well, Jeffrey, I've been an impact investor for 12 years, and I have been investing in Africa and India. My family lived in Africa in the 50s and 60s, so I have family ties there. And that is my focus area. But I would sit at dinner tables, whether it was in Switzerland, where I previously lived, or Los Angeles or Dallas, where I'm currently based. And I could tell the people around the table had capital, but nobody's capital was aligned with their values. Nobody was even thinking about it. And on the other side of my life, I was involved in very deep networks of impact investing practitioners, large family offices, but it seemed like everybody thought you had to be a billionaire, or you had to have a $250,000 check, or you had to have the right advisor to be an impact investor. And if you didn't have any of that, it was impossible. And that's really why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to get the message out to everyone, from somebody that has a private wealth advisor at a private bank to somebody that has $100 per month to invest, for them to know that they can be an impact investor too, and to create a playbook for them. So the second part of my book is essentially a guidebook, define your values, recognize the importance of living according to your values and how that can come through in all your resources. And then a deep, deep, deep dive into what impact investing is, alongside the fact that we all need to create community around this type of work. And then think about our consumer choices and being an active citizen to line up with those values. And so that was the main reason that I was inspired to write this book.
And it could be $10 a week. It could be $100 a week. It could be,
Yep.
hey, I'm not going to buy those shoes. I'm going to invest that over here in this side, or go without, or hey, maybe I can get some pre-owned shoes. Maybe even those are a lot of those sneakers go for some big money. So there's lots of ways you can do it. I recently listened, in fact, with clothes, my daughter's in the clothes business, fashion business, and she talks about the energy used to be able to create clothes in the fashion industry is amazing. So, well, you talk a lot about in the book and also in your podcast about opening up the conversation around money. I think this is a really good topic. What did you mean by that? And then I have my own thoughts about what you thought you meant.
Yeah, yeah. Well, money is a taboo subject. It's stigmatized for many particular groups. You said it really well, where you said even if you have $100, per month, or you have a small amount of money, or $10 a day, or not buying that coffee. I think that one of the groups that money is stigmatized for are groups that don't have large amounts of capital to invest, that are probably not talking about investing on a regular basis. When in reality, those individuals can open a small brokerage account and have access to ESG funds and sustainable funds, which are a good starting point to impact. What's powerful about this is that when you start impact investing, you flip your narrative around money. So you're not only talking about the financial return, you're not only talking about the alpha and the beta and all the Greeks that I learned really well working on Wall Street. You're talking about the impact that your money is having. And that allows for a more open conversation about money. The same goes for women. Women, I think, are not comfortable with financial terminology. I would say that probably, living my life as the finance expert in my family, but then, speaking to my female friends, I know that this is definitely the case. And so the fact that women can talk about the impact that their money is having starts to open those doors. And then the third group is children. So I actually do put aside $250 a month for my kids into an environmental ESG. And then I talked to my son about it. He started the environmental club in his first grade classroom. He loves to talk about Trash Island. And I think that this is another way to engage the next generation as well around money and open up that discussion.
Now, you mentioned earlier, and I've talked about this, that you've been investing heavily in people in Africa and India. Explain why you do that and tell us about any success stories.
Absolutely. Well, I do have family ties in Africa, and so I think my risk perception of investing in an emerging market was very different than maybe some others, would have. They think it's, very far away, it's risky, people don't have very high income, so how could they possibly afford any products? When in reality, there is a study that's been done that shows that even individuals living on less than $4 a day have a budget for healthcare and energy access and financial inclusion and agriculture, tools, and waste and sanitation, which are the 5 sectors that we're focused on in our fund. When I market sized for my most recent capital raise, we were looking at 1 billion consumers in 4 countries living on less than $15 a day. But again, they still have the budgets and the desire and the need for access. I think where the true opportunity is for our investments comes in the area of access and lacking access. So we doubled our money while improving access to affordable on-demand eye care in India when we exited that business, because there was nowhere to go get glasses or a cataract surgery in the region. And an ophthalmologist said, I'm going to create this company. And people showed up, and it's still a growing and thriving business. A couple other success stories are Kasha, a women's health e-commerce platform based in Rwanda and Kenya, which is growing and scaling quite quickly. And what they're doing is they're creating an aspirational brand around women's health where they're selling soaps and lotions, and then, women's health products that women buy every single month. But they're creating a way for women to not have a stigma attached to their health, which is a underlying social issue in pretty much all of the countries where we invest. But that business is, touching upon really significant revenue, and has distributed over 1 million products since they started 4 or 5 years
Wow.
ago. So yeah, I mean, incredible innovations. And I think that that's really what will solve some of the most pressing problems that we have.
So you mentioned a couple of times the family ties back to Africa, and I believe it started with your grandfather. Tell me about how you got those family ties all the way back.
Yeah, I thought it was so normal growing up, but learned that it wasn't, and it was
Yeah.
also very hard to get there. So my family's from the Midwest of the U.S. I'm third generation American, so my grandparents were born in the U.S., but my paternal grandfather was a medical doctor, and he actually, his first wife passed. He had 4 children. He remarried a spunky lady who was, incredible, and I think very service minded. And they had some connections also through the Catholic Church, but more so kind of friends. And they decided to open a health clinic in a remote part of Tanzania. And I've been to Tanzania, and it's not Dar es Salaam. It's not a major city. It was a very remote part. So they took a steamship from New York City to Cape Town, and then drove a airstream up from Cape Town all the way to Tanzania, and lived there for about a decade. I think the last story, though, that really inspired my work, and I encourage everybody who's listening to think about maybe one story in their life that shapes their values, is my aunt, who was adopted because her mother died in childbirth. And for
Mm.
me, healthcare is a really important sector to invest in. It's what I'm drawn to, and 30% of my current portfolio is invested in healthcare, and particularly women's health is an area of focus.
In India, India is becoming the world's 5th largest economy by 2024. It's overtaking both the UK and France. Where should we be focusing there?
Yeah, well, I would say that investors should definitely think about where not to focus. There are a number of bubbles. India, over the past decade, has developed its own thriving investment ecosystem, particularly with angels that have a lot of capital that they can't take out of the country, and they're investing into own businesses. So I've, been watching kind of ag tech, ed tech. I'm not sure they're the right places to invest in India right now, but I think the most sound and long-term profit generating companies are need to haves. And that's what we focus on at Beyond Capital. It's healthcare innovations. We're invested in one of 2 healthcare drone companies in the country. And that is, I think, expected to be a big winner in our portfolio.
I love that. Need to have. I love need to have kind of services, because you focus on what everybody's got to have or needs to have every single day. It's kind of like that razor
Right.
blade theory. Hey, what about the rest of the BRIC countries like Brazil, Russia, China? Do you see yourself increasing any kind of investments there, or maybe in Latin America?
We don't. And it's not because I don't like those markets. It's because as an early stage investor, we are very hands-on, and we love to be hands-on. We believe that we're investing in people. So for example, in our slide deck, it's not just the company logos, it's the people's faces behind the companies. And that to us is extremely important, to be hands-on with our portfolio companies. Our CEOs call me all the time, even though I'm literally on the other side of the planet, and we help them succeed. So for us to know our markets extremely well, go deep into the deal flow, we have to review thousands of companies to make 20 investments in an investment period. So we really have to focus in on the regions where we are oriented. But there are a lot of other great impact investors that do similar things, particularly in Latin America.
Now, I also, one last thing, I noticed you're big into paleo diet, right? And I love bacon. Does that count? Does that count?
Yes, you can do keto on bacon.
I set that up. I love to talk about bacon anytime. It's a sizzling subject for me. I eat anything with bacon. I tell people I'm a vegetarian. I eat all things that eat vegetables. So I'm huge on paleo, and I love bacon right at the top. What's your favorite?
My favorite paleo recipe
Yeah.
would probably be Oh my goodness, it is so hard to answer that question. It would probably be some sort of, turkey meatball with vegetables and squash. It's not that hard to eat paleo. We do a lot of tacos with cassava flour tortillas as well. I think in today's world, it's actually quite easy. And I just do it for a high performance lifestyle. My husband does it for health reasons, and it's been transformative for him.
Well, fantastic. Well, I talk about being transformative, all the things that you're doing, Eva. Eva Yazari, she's the CEO and founder of Beyond Capital Fund. And make sure you get out there and get the book, The Good Your Money Can Do. Don't forget, it's available on Amazon and anywhere that you can find a book, and certainly through go check it out in our C-Suite book club as well. The Good Your Money Can Do, and you want to do good if you got money. That's the name of the game right there. Eva, thanks so much for joining us right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hazlett. Hey, at the end of every show, I like to talk about the things I learn. Well, money is good, but giving is better. And not just giving, but being able to right the wrongs, or to give money where your good money can go to good work. That's what I learned today. And hey, don't forget that when you make it to the top, when you have the ability to change other people's lives, you can and you should. That's the name of the game. We all have a responsibility to do just that. And so there's that famous saying, when you make it to the top, don't forget to send the elevator back down for everybody else. That's what I learned, or at least was reminded of, right here on this show. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on All Business with Jeffrey Hazlett, right here on C-Suite TV.